Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our March 16th council meeting. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Roll call.
Mr. Oja?
Here.
Mr. Menegini?
Here.
Dr. Hayes? Here. Mr. Gottstein?
Here.
Mr. Ball?
Yep.
Approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of March 2nd and the special meeting of March 12th. Any additions or corrections?
No additions or corrections. I'll make a motion we approve the minutes of regular meeting of March 2nd and a special meeting of March 12th.
I'll support. Motion made by George, supported by myself. Roll call.
Mr. Menegini?
On March 2nd, yes. A special meeting on March 12th, I wasn't here. I'd like to abstain on that.
You can't really abstain on that. Even if you're not here, you have to vote yes or no.
No.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Gottstein?
Yes.
Mr. Ball?
Yep.
Mr. Oja?
Yes. Approval manifest 2015-5 in the amount of $390,225.22. Chris?
Just one question on page 1, under admin, Menominee Industrial Supply, 3 border review ads. I'm guessing that's a misprint.
I think you're correct, but I'll have to look into it.
Would we have ran it in the current multiple weeks?
That's probably the Menominee News. Yeah,
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
that's all I have.
George?
Okay. On page 1, the $25 for the escrow agreement on Spring Valley, and there's also on page 4 for the amount of $1,259.30 plus $25 comes at $1,284.30. Trish, I don't have too many. I got on page 2. Right up on top there, these business cards that the police officers are getting. I don't know if we just order from anybody. They're $35 a piece, or $35 for 100. Now, while I was going through, looking through this, an ad happened to come up on television. For $10, you can get 500. I don't know if we, on some of the stuff, if we can go out and kind of check prices here and there, or is it just cities buying? Who cares? As long as
No, not at all. No, I always look around, but for this, we have our logo at CJ Graphics. They have our,
is there possibly somebody else, Trish, that you can get it from? I mean, $35 for 100. That's 35 cents a piece, eh? I mean, I think, maybe we should kind of start looking at some pricing here a little bit.
Okay. Well, next time they have to go for, anybody has to go for cards, make sure we check around and see what kind of pricing you come up with.
And really, page 6, this is more out of curiosity. I don't know if this is right down on, pretty much on the bottom, the 5-gallon work pail. And Pail Limited, I don't know what the abbreviation is, for $35 or $31, and right a few lines down, there's 4 or 5-gallon plastic pails for $16. I don't quite know what the connection is on that deal. think that's it.
To explain that, George, we had to remove all the oil from the bearings in unit number 1, and we purchased empty pails to put the oil
Yeah.
in. Yeah.
But,
Well, I think the question was, though, there was one for 31 and then 4 for 16.
Yeah, and I'd have to look at the quantities. The one doesn't have quantities, just says 5-gallon pail. The other one has 4 of them, so
when I was
And
looking
those-
at
oh, those
Joe,
are the
is
lids.
it possible that's one of these,
those are the lids for the pails.
a pail with, 2 compartments hanging all the way around it or something on that order? I couldn't get the connection.
Okay, well, let me look it up, and then we can get you an answer on it.
And page 11, the last item down on water thawing for Peterson's for the $270, thaw 2 water line services. I know there's got to be an explanation for it. I don't know why this one would be so much more.
They charge per hour, George, so if it took them longer, if they sat on that particular job for multiple hours to get it,
Okay.
it would be longer, more of a charge.
That's fine.
Yeah.
That's all I have.
The
Chairman.
$90 is a flat 1-hour
Yeah.
charge, and typically, most of them get done in an hour or less, so that's why you see all those $90 charges. So that's why the
way it
160.
kinda looked, I thought, well, maybe it was a bigger valve or a hydrant or something on
Just
that
more
order.
time.
That was only what I thought it might end up being.
Well, that one might have been a main too, because it was, it's in the transmission distribution. It's not listed with an address. Most of the other ones are listed with an address attached.
You know,
Oh, I was looking at 714 Brown.
Down here, the 270,
270, I was looking at 160.
yeah, 270
Okay,
doesn't have an address.
okay.
Dr. Hayes?
I just had 2 comments that we spent $7,500 on salt and about $2,500 on thawing water mains.
Lee?
All asked and answered, except just to make a little comment here. On page 7, I see under the electric fund, our power purchase is still holding very low compared to past years, so we are doing good there. That's all.
I have no questions. With that, I'm looking for a motion to approve.
Make a motion, we approve manifest 2015-05 in the amount of $390,225.22.
Support?
Motion made by Chris, supported by Dr. Hayes. Roll call.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Gottstein?
Yes.
Mr. Ball?
Yep.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Does anyone from the audience wish to address the council on the minutes, manifest, or agenda items? If you do, please come up to the podium, state your name and address for the record. You'll have 5 minutes. If not, there'll be a time for comment on any subject at the end of the meeting. Okay. This evening, we have a public hearing for a Michigan Natural Resources Trust Fund grant application. And with that, I need a motion to go into public hearing.
Make a motion to go to public hearing.
Motion made by Chris, supported by George. Roll call.
Mr. Gottstein?
Yes.
Mr. Ball?
Yeah.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If you remember last year, we put together a project and a grant application through the Michigan Department of Natural Resources Trust Fund grant. And this program was for, or this project was for Strawberry Lake. We were very close in the scoring on this project, but we're not successful, partially due to they did split some projects off, took some smaller projects below us that actually scored less than us, but because they were tied to the Bell, the Iron Bell, thank you, the Iron Bell Trail, the governor's trail initiative, they actually, under the board's discretion, they picked those projects. So we brought this project back to the Parks and Recreation Committee in December and asked if they wanted to make changes or if they wanted to file a new application, different application, what they wanted to do. And I think the planning, or the Parks and Recreation Committee felt overwhelmingly that we had a good project. There wasn't much we had to do to it. In looking at the scoring, I think we maximized what we could on the scoring for the project, and we were very close, and so they felt like they wanted to bring this to council to put again in for this 2015 round. So it's, again, it's the same project we had for last year. I guess what we could do is open it up for questions for council, and we do have a number of letters of support that we added to the packet for you from individuals and businesses in the community. Jeff is here, and Elizabeth from Coleman, who helped us put the project together last year and again this year. Are they available for answering any questions? So,
Ray, could you give us just a little bit of a rundown on what this all?
sure. Jeff, why don't you come on up? Basically, when we looked at the project, we recognize, and I'm speaking for the Parks and Recreation Committee, we recognize that the Strawberry Lake Park is, it's right off of our main street. It is a very highly used park. It's a popular park within the community. And we felt that there were a number of opportunities for a good project out of this park. And so the Planning Commission, or the Parks and Recreation Board, just felt that this was a high priority, should be one of the higher priorities for going out and trying to put project together. We felt it fit well with the particular trust fund grant, and so what we did was we looked at, like getting the roadway paved and improved parking lot, improve the softball field, or that field that's actually used quite a bit now for Little League, and basically improve a lot of those areas. Jeff, you brought the board and everything. Why don't you go ahead and present the project again?
Sure, I should have brought a stand of some kind, but I can give you some of the highlights here, George. Yeah, the same parks as we had last year. There's trail improvements in this particular area that most people probably can't see, but it's in purple. There's a canoe and kayak launch proposed. Widen Strawberry Lane and repave to Strawberry Lake Road to 24 feet wide. There is some benches by the ice rink. At the baseball field, there's proposed replacing the infield, putting in an irrigation system, electrical service for the irrigation system, a concession stand, building, proposed bleachers in the side hill, and a paved parking lot there for the baseball field. And also there's some clearing and landscaping in an area here. It's not indicated on the map, but there may be some over here by the time we actually put this in. Pretty much the major change with the application, it's not really a major change, is we're going to play up the tie to this Bell Isle Trail, the Governor's Trail, from Ironwood to Bell Isle, down by Detroit. And you actually have an existing MDOT multi-use trail that is on published documents that goes around Strawberry Lake and ties back to US 2. US 2 is part of the Bell Isle Trail. So that tie already exists. We don't really have to do anything other than point that out and play that up in the grant application so they fully understand that there's an existing trail system that ties in with the Bell Isle Trail. And we think that that'll be something different and hopefully get some more points for next year.
One of the first things we looked at when looking at this project was actually, we know we have to make improvements to a good quarter of the trail program, or trail system. That's the area would be on the southwest side, as you go along that side of the lake.
There's also some spot repairs too, I think.
Right, and so we wanted to get those improvements made as part of this project, and I think that's what kick-started the overall project.
Did we do anything to repair the trail on the extreme west side, right?
Yeah, the south, that southwest quarter. Yep, that's part of this, this program. It goes up to the, kind of on the
Almost the whole
northwest.
west side.
Yeah.
And, the south side, the west half to three quarters.
And we also recognize that there's a, you know, we talk about a canoe kayak launch. Really what that, where that came about is that there's interest in, it looks like a need for foot access to get down to the lake, you know, with a non-motorized type of, or smaller boat. And then in the winter, that could be used by HUVs to get shacks down on the lake, because we've had that issue before of trying to get down. So we wanted to make that area, we don't want it to be a boat launch, an actual boat launch, because it's in a very soft area.
Yeah.
And so we want to, you know, it's kind of like an all-season road. We're not going to make it an all-season road. But in the winter, when it hardens up, I think SUV or HUVs can get down there, you know, pull in their shacks, or, you know, we can get those down. So I think it'll be something that's used quite a bit, actually. And it comes off of that southwest parking lot.
Okay, Jeff, I noticed the blacktop you had talked about, just going up to the end of the baseball diamond up here,
Yes.
blacktop and one?
Yeah. We gotta keep it tied to the park. Start getting too far outside the park.
No,
That's, yeah.
because there were some questions on the other end of the road. And I'm just wondering how far you're going with that.
Yeah, well, right now we're planning to go to the parking lot.
I know after last year, or after the last, when we did the tree removal around the one side,
Yes.
there was a lot of issues with stump removal and that. Has that been planned into this one?
There is,
I know we're still planning tree removal.
right,
We're gonna get the stumps and get it cleaned up right away?
there's a plan is to have that cleaned up.
Okay.
You know, we did some stump removal early in the winter. We're going to continue to do that.
On
We're
the
not
side,
gonna wait.
the side we're gonna clear as part of this project.
Right.
Do it right at the same time.
Right at the same time, try and get
Okay.
that cleaned up.
That's good.
Yeah, and we also are coming back in under this year's tree planting with a good dose of tree planting in that area we dealt with this last year. We also had tree planting in this project as well.
Do we have money put aside for this, Ray, that?
We do have some monies through Parks and Rec, but we are gonna have to raise some additional funds. And then we do have some local work that we're gonna be programming. This project, we won't know about this project until late this fall, November-ish, December. And there's a three-year window on actually doing the work under the grant. So, you know, we do have some time to, if we get the award in December, to get it programmed. This past year, the past couple of years, as we know, it's been tough with some of our own work because of the winter and you know, trying to get kick-started into some of the summer activities. But, I mean, I look back at, you know, how Iron Mountain handled the city park, and they had to raise over $150, and they really stepped up, the community stepped up, and so I'm hoping that they can help a little bit with this as well. I mean, this should be a very high-profile, positive project for the community.
I know, I kind of read through here and I'd see it's $100,000, that's the city's fund, I'm assuming?
Yeah, that includes in-kind and cash, so it's a total of 100. You know, so-
Okay, it would kind of be nice to see, you know, if we could get a little bit better of a breakdown on that. But I mean, that, like we say, we're looking down the line
Down
a
the
long
line, yeah.
ways.
You do have some breakdown of that, don't you?
Yeah, if you wanna go through some of it, we can.
It just, maybe the big amount, big dollar
Yeah,
items, Jeff.
In the local match column, there's $13,000 for providing the power service.
Okay.
Probably be done with the electrical department. There's $20,000 in there for the bleachers. Have to do some dirt work, they're gonna be wood bleachers, so that could be a work in progress. It could be done with city forces, could be done with volunteer labor. You could hire somebody and pay the money, you know. That'll have to be worked out. Some of the bigger items here,
Good.
20 gravel
Okay.
is worth quite a bit.
That's quite a bit, that, our gravel pit and our
Yeah,
gravel source.
yeah. No, that sounds real good.
Yeah.
Sounds real
There's
good.
always the
Do you
intent
have
to
questions?
keep the actual cash as low as possible and use, so it depends on the availability of the city forces.
Yeah.
If you're having a
Well-
year and you have time, you can do that, you have flexibility.
That's true to a point, if you got a lot of help.
Yeah.
But we don't have a lot of help and we don't have a lot of bodies.
And it's kind of
So now you gotta look for other sources.
Terry, do you want to make a comment on it?
Well, just, I'm the chairman of the Parks and Recreation Committee, and if the council has questions, feel free to ask. You know, the committee as a whole supported the project, and, the first time around and the second time around, so.
Could you just identify yourself for the camera?
Terry
Everybody
Spence,
knows,
Yes, I'm, this one?
that one.
You're good.
That one.
Terry Spence, 805 Circle Drive, Chairman of the Parks and Rec Committee for the City of Norway.
Thank you. Does the council have any questions for Terry or more for Jeff?
I see, Terry, we've got some support here, a very nice letter from Ann Rushka, who's the district manager of the Dickinson Conservation District. And she's got a very nice letter here explaining how nice this place is. And I'm sure a letter of support from her will go a long ways in the application for the grant.
That
And there
was
are
a
other
big-
people also that
Yeah,
have.
she was a big mover and shaker on Norway Mirror.
In her letter, I do wanted to note for the public that it does support removing the box elder trees.
Yes, we were excited to see your progress in clearing the near monoculture of box elder.
Exactly. And we have trees on order to be planted.
And I learned something here also in this letter from her, where they have an annual frog and toad survey down there, and that I did not know, and I really don't get too excited about that, but,
Well, those are indicative species of
right,
the environment going bad on you. If you no longer have frogs and toads, then you're in trouble. So they run those surveys on a regular basis.
I'd like to make a comment. First, I'd like to say that I support the project, that I think that if the city's moving forward in this, that would be good. But I also like to say that it's a popular area because people could walk in the shade down there, and now for half of the park, you cannot walk in the shade. That even though a box elder may not be the best tree in the world, it still provided shade and it still had some aesthetic beauty. And to remove everything without replacing those first, to me, doesn't make any sense. I thought we had more pressing things to do in the city, but I think that this is certainly worthwhile, and I'd like to see what happens with the trees that are planted before you start cutting down more trees. Because, again, a box elder may not be the most beautiful tree in the world. It certainly has no commercial value, but to remove all the shade from the park doesn't make any sense to me, because that's why people are there. And certainly the flowers were invasive species, according to Ann, and it may be worthwhile getting rid of them, but they were still pleasant to see and wonderful to smell. So, again, I certainly don't want to see the rest of those trees removed without having some shade, at least on the other side.
Well, we didn't, remove all of the box elders at one time, on a portion of the lake. There's a number of them that are still there that we talk about removing. But we have ordered new trees that will be planted the 1st of May.
And it's
Okay.
going to take
First
20
May.
years before they
First of June.
provide good shade.
Well, some of the trees that we've ordered, they tell me are some of the newest, greatest, most wonderful things that grow to be huge in a very short time. Time will tell. But we pick species that are fast growing to plant down there. So if they grow half as fast as box elders, we'll have shade fairly soon.
Just so there's no misconception here, 1st of June, around Memorial Day is when we're going to do planting.
Well, the ones that come through the SCS office will be here the 1st of
Oh,
May.
okay. Okay,
Yeah, the other ones you're talking about, that's a different program.
yeah.
Ray, maybe we should buy a bunch of umbrellas. Locus very concerned about shade there walking around, that we could lend them out by the parking lot there, I mean, we know we're gonna lose some, but at least we'll have, give them some protection.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. One thing, this would be more for staff. I saw we had posted it on Facebook. Did we receive any comments back on the Facebook post about the public hearing?
Not that I'm aware of, John.
You can comment on the articles on Facebook.
Yeah,
So I don't,
was not told that, I don't check it personally, but,
I didn't think about checking it before I came in myself.
and Emily didn't say anything to me about
Okay.
anybody posting back.
I just wanted, if we had, then I wanted to make sure that comment was entered into the record for the public hearing. If there has been some, if we could get those printed and included in the record for the public hearing.
All right.
And I have one question. The far side of the lake where there still are trees is an old dump. Is that considered part of the Superfund site that's over there? Are we going to get into trouble if we start disturbing that?
That, I do not have an answer for that, guys. I'm not real aware of the site or the dump. I don't believe, in our specifications, if for some reason the trail were to come into it, there are ways of dealing with it. But the intent would not be to clean it up. That's not a work item at this point.
I was concerned mostly about the trash underneath the trees. The trees, if you start digging over there, you're going to dig into a lot of trash.
During the
I-
design, right now we're just in the grant proposal process. During the design process itself, that probably can be better addressed when you get down to the details and specifications and plans.
Doc, I don't believe that dump, the dump is more in the area where the skating rink is. I can't ever recall it going any further than that.
Well,
Body area.
probably before your time, because I know my kids used to go down there and dig for bottles all the time. I think that's where the original dump was.
It was there and then across the road.
Across the road is where.
That's not the registered
first
spot
side
though
is.
from the DEQ on the Superfund. The registered spot is the ice rink and the softball area. That's the registered site, so
Could have been overflow or people getting close and just
could be,
dropping stuff, you know.
could be. And you go far enough back, I mean, I got bottles in my backyard from just people pitching stuff off the front porch, you know, so, I don't think they have those as registered because it's kind of random.
Now, they found a lot of, when they did the habitat here, when they started digging for those houses, they found bottles and
Yeah.
all kinds of stuff there.
Does the public have any questions or comments on this? If you do, please come up to the podium. Is there any further comment? Is there any further comment? Is there any further comment? Okay, hearing none, we need to get a motion to go out of public hearing.
I make a motion, we go out of public hearing.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion made by Lee, supported by Chris. Roll call.
Mr. Ball?
Yeah.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Minigini?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Godstein?
Yes.
In our communications this evening, we have 10 things to go over, so this will be a longer meeting. So first thing we have on our list of communications this evening is Resolution 2015-01, the Michigan Natural Resources Trust Fund Grant Application. We've just held the public hearing on this, and this is the resolution to move forward with the grant application. Is there any questions or comments further, or I'm looking for a motion?
I'll make a motion that Resolution 2015-1 be approved, which is the MDR Trust Fund Grant Application, Strawberry Lake.
Second.
Motion made by Lee, supported by Chris. Roll call.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Minigini?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Godstein?
Yes.
Mr. Ball?
Yes.
Okay, second this evening, we have ordinance number 417, an ordinance to amend ordinance 401, Norway area zoning ordinance. This is to include language for the hoop house or fabric house for storage sheds. They're the hoop style with the fabric over them, include specifications include the requirements on them. Currently, our zoning does not address them, so by not addressing them, it bans them. So this is to allow them. Mr. Anderson, anything else?
I really don't have anything else. The only other item that we addressed within this ordinance was under interpretation of the zoning map in section 303, where we defined contiguous parcels, where it was contiguous across an alley is really where we found, where if you own on either side of the alley, we've seen quite a few requests to utilize those as contiguous. And we've had a number of different instances, so we wanted to define that as contiguous.
Jeremy, what did you just say? If we didn't,
Currently, the fabric-type storage structures with the metal frame
yeah,
are currently banned because they're not addressed.
Oh, okay.
They're not allowed, so they're banned in the zoning ordinance. This is to allow them,
allow,
with specifications that they have to meet.
okay.
And do you need a building permit for that?
Yes, yes. They're still treated as accessory structures.
Okay.
And what happened is that our language, current language, says specifically that they need to be built in materials of like kind. So you don't have a fabric house, you can't have a
So
fabric.
even if somebody had one up before this is passed, they're illegal because it wasn't addressed in here?
Yeah, they were non-conforming.
Non-conforming,
And
so-
so we ended up hearing a case at the zoning board of appeals, and the zoning board of appeals, they basically said, you need to go back and looking at, they didn't approve the appeal. What they did was they put a stay on the decision to see if the planning commission could come up with language which would allow them, because they felt that there was reasonable argument to see if you could somehow incorporate their, it's kind of like those blow-up pools. I don't know if that's the right term. You know, they're becoming more and more popular.
Oh, yeah,
You see them, they're
yeah.
cheaper option. You see those. These are cheaper options, or least expensive options now. You're seeing more of them. They're being sold at Home Depots and Menards and other areas. So we're going to be seeing these, and they felt like we needed to have something to address them.
Okay, I put one up a year ago, so I didn't, but say I did.
Yeah, you were
So
non-conforming.
I'm non-conforming, do I have to come and get a permit for it then?
You would not be non-conforming, in passing this, you would not be non-conforming for the structure as far as the fabric, but you would be non-conforming if you didn't have a permit for placing the shed. It's no different than if you got a shed and you didn't get a permit, you would still need to get a permit.
Yeah, so they'd still need to get the zoning compliance permit.
Well, I got one to put up, so I better get a permit, I guess.
Yeah.
Does it make any difference if it's canvas or aluminum or
No, this specifically addresses canvas.
okay. Okay, how about the ones with the aluminum tops? Is that?
Actual
or is there
aluminum
something else?
tops.
They're like a carport, but they're all aluminum, and they have
Oh,
some
yeah,
have
but those are
sizes.
dealt with, those are
Those are
different, it's a carport. Yeah,
Are
those
them
are,
allowed, right?
those are allowed, yeah.
They never used to be.
Yeah, they're addressed under carports.
Oh,
See, it's because they have open sides. I mean,
Yeah.
there's different definitions in the zoning for different structures.
it seems to me, I remember years back, 3-4 years back, that we looked into that and they weren't allowed at that time for some reason.
They've always, from what I can recall, they've always been allowed. The placement of them has been under question. I mean, they have to meet the proper placements.
The one over by you, George, I remember the placement was the issue. That was why there was a problem with it. There was one over near you, I think.
Across the street.
Yeah, they still involve setback issues. I mean, you still have to follow setbacks. The other issue that we've run into in the past is they'll put up a carport or something with open sides, and then all of a sudden they're closed, and they actually fall under a garage, depending on the size. You know, so then they have to actually, the building code could step in.
Okay.
Yes. So, I mean, over time, they could make themselves non-compliant by adding the hard sides. And we've seen that.
I would presume that this would not include temporary structures such as tents or things like that.
This does not include tents, no. We we've addressed that. Because that came up, well, what if I throw up a tent in my backyard for my kid, or, you know, and this doesn't deal with tents, no. This is a permanent storage type structure. So,
What if you use it as a permanent structure, but it's temporary in nature? Such
well,
as,
then your use will be probably identified under, you know, over a period of time, and we'll probably have to address it based on the use.
Yeah, because this is calling them temporary. The Canvas items, it defines them as only being temporary.
Well, they're defined as temporary in nature just because over time they're going to degrade, and they're going to have to be dealt with from a property maintenance standpoint.
Okay.
That's there's two different terms of temporary.
Okay.
I mean, one is you take it up and you take it down. It's like a temporary pool. You put it up for the summer, you take it down for the winter. Those are, you know, we have to deal with those as a temporary type structure, but there's still language that deals with that as well. Zoning is very complicated that way. You have to use some practical insight into, you know, helping the people get through, you know, some of that language.
Any other questions or comments? Otherwise, I'm looking for a motion.
Make a motion that ordinance 417 be approved and that staff publish as per charter requirements.
Support.
Motion made by Chris, supported by Lee. Roll call.
Mr. Magini?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
yes,
Mr. Gottstein?
Yes.
Mr. Ball?
Yeah.
Mr. Oja?
Yes. Next, we have Sturgeon Falls Hydro Facility, Hydro Computational Fluid Dynamics. Joe?
This is the second part of the program that I was explaining to you with the 3D scans that were done by Hydrotech. And I have in front of you, I have a quote from Norcan Hydro to evaluate the 3D scan and do the computational fluid dynamics study for a cost not to exceed $32,300. That's the high end. It could be in the $28,000 range. They just gave me a range. 32.3 was the high end. So if you just approve the high end, I can manage it from there.
Will that include a report back to us?
Yes, that'll be a full report back to us and study on what the dynamics look like of the water.
What could they suggest there? I mean, what will this lead to?
Well, it should lead to us figuring out what might be causing the cracking on the runners. Yep.
Any other questions? George, Chris, Lee, Doc?
Well, excuse me, I don't like the idea of spending the money, but it's something that we have to do. We got to get to the bottom of this issue.
Joe, are there any deadlines on this, when they're gonna get back with any of this stuff?
The 3D scan was 4 weeks to completion, so there's 2 weeks left in that. And then 4 to 6 weeks on the fluid dynamic study.
Yeah, is that going, I see the address is Canada.
Yeah, it's
Do you have
Ottawa.
to ship it up there, or?
No, the computer program just can be emailed digitally to them. They're going to work on it.
Oh.
It's just a computer program from the 3D scan that was done. That's what they're going to model in the computer.
I'm assuming that's the only company out there that can handle something like this.
They're very limited. There are some companies, but out on the West Coast, Canyon Hydro, there's some other ones. But Hydrotech worked with these folks before, and we're comfortable with them. And so they came recommended to use.
Okay. Anything else? Otherwise, I'm looking for a motion.
that was, follow up with Lee, that was my question too, is there some kind of a competitive bid here, are we getting?
No, I did not do competitive bidding because I went along with the suggestion of Hydrotech, who did the 3D scan, that they did the 3D scan, they're gonna work with NORCAN on getting the dynamics done, and they've worked together before.
No further questions. I'll make a recommendation that go with the contract for Norco for a bid not to exceed $32,300.
Second.
Motion made by George, supported by Chris. Roll call.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Gottstein?
Yes.
Mr. Ball?
Yeah.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Menignon?
Yes.
Okay, next we have, again with the hydro, Sturgeon Falls Hydro Facility, Unit Number 1 shaft extension. Joe?
Okay, this one is something that we've discussed in other meetings also, and you've asked me questions on how that end runner on Unit 1 and Unit 2, some of the questions that came up were why didn't it have a shaft and another bearing support on the end of it. Those particular runners, especially on Unit Number 1, was the most damaged runner, and some of the results of the 3D scan and talking with some mechanical people was their idea that there's a strong possibility that the vibrations were pronounced on that particular runner because it doesn't have a bearing support on the other end of it. So I would like to put in a bearing support and a shaft extension on the end runner. And as I talked to some of you earlier, Unit Number 2, we dewatered that on Saturday, and that runner on the end is also cracking. It's got 6-inch to 4-inch cracks on almost all the blades. So I believe the same issue is on Unit Number 2. So I would like to, I'm asking for $32,500 to do the one shaft extension on Unit 1, and I would like to double that so I can get the shaft and stuff getting built to put it on Unit 2 also. So I'm asking for $65,000 to have the shafts extended on both units to stabilize the end runner.
I think if one's having the problem, we might as well fix it on both while we're doing it.
And I would agree also.
It definitely makes sense to put an end bearing on it.
Yeah.
But I see here, under previous engineering, this configuration was defined as sufficient. Obviously, it wasn't, so we paid good money for bad engineering.
Yeah, I have no comment about.
This isn't the same firm we're going back to, is it?
No. I have no comment on that.
Joe, I just kind of find it hard that doubling the price for 2.
Well, that doesn't, George, I know I can get it done for 65. It could be less. I wasn't able to talk to the guy. He's out of town right now. But if you want to wait, and I'll do another one at another time for the other side, that's fine.
It just bothers me that, I mean, here, yeah, I realize you gotta set some jigs up and you gotta, there's gonna be some figuring out, and if you're gonna make one, I can understand the price. But if you're duplicating the parts and you're gonna put out 2 of them, I don't, personally don't see where that price should stick the same for 2 is
I think
just
though-
doubling the price.
I think though this is just the not to exceed number.
Yeah.
I would likely come in under that once they've
Have
got
you
the
ever
jigs
seen
set up.
any come in less?
Yes, I've seen stuff come in
How
under.
often?
Depending on who we're working with, sometimes quite a bit.
Yeah.
We don't have, with this particular group, we haven't worked with them enough for me to have any kind of guess
I
as to whether-
understand that, but I just,
We can-
I think that some of the stuff maybe should go out on time and material.
This particular one's not going to happen until after runoff, so if we wanted to hold it off another meeting
Yeah,
to get that quote. we
it
could-
doesn't have to be tonight. They asked me to bring it to you so they can get started on ordering the parts and designing the bearing housing and stuff. So that's why I brought it tonight. But if you want to hold off for a couple more weeks,
You know,
that's
here's
fine
another,
too.
I mean, yeah, I understand where we're coming from and the people that we're working with, and we're very happy with their work and their quality of work and stuff, but it seems like on some of the
Well,
stuff, when
the
you
other
get
thing
you in
would-
the corner.
Could we approve the one, so they can
Yeah.
start getting it set up and then
Yeah.
come back in 2 weeks for the other,
Sure.
for the second?
You could do
I
that.
think we should do, I'd like to table this and see if we can get some other ideas on some money here, Joe. I don't have no quality if we're going with one, or problem,
Yeah.
but when we're just doubling the price, that bothers me.
Well, that's the only thing I can do, because I don't have a full price on both. So I just decided to ask you to double it, because I know I can get it done for that or less than that.
When could they start on this Unit 1 Runner 4?
The shaft extension, it won't be till after spring
Except
runoff.
with the bearing on the end of it.
Yeah, that will be when we can dewater the unit again, which probably won't be till July.
Oh, so
We have time.
we have time,
we have
or we could
time,
just
yeah.
table the whole thing?
Yep, we have time, yes. It's not a problem. I have no issue with tabling
Think you
it.
could have more prices and/or / better prices next meeting then?
I can ask to have that price revived for a cost of 2.
So then we'd need a motion to postpone until
I made a motion.
May 4th.
Oh, I made a motion to, I'd like to table it.
Okay.
I'll support that.
Are you okay with the wording? Because the wording is to postpone until May 4th. Okay. It's a motion to postpone the vote on this till May 4th,
Well, why would we do that?
because that's our next meeting.
May 4th? No, April 6th.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Good catch, Doc.
I'm a month ahead, thank you, Doc, April 6th.
Good catch.
I don't know, I missed that one,
I wondered why we were holding off a month.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Can't answer that one, Doc. So, roll call.
Who seconded Paul?
I did.
So that April till our April 6th.
Till
meeting.
April 6th, postpone till April 6th.
All right. Mr. Gottstein,
Yes.
Mr. Ball,
Yes.
Mr. Oja,
Yes.
Mr. Menigini.
Yes.
Dr. Hayes.
Yes.
Okay. Next, we have approval of Coleman Engineering, design and inspect US 2 and highway intersection repair. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Joe again. He's been working with Coleman Engineering and with MDOT on getting prepared for bidding the 2 patch jobs that we have, one on US 2 and one on US 8. This is from last year's dig that we did, water freeze. So, Joe, why don't you go ahead and...
Okay,
tell me.
as you all know, we had those issues with the water mains blowing up in US 2 and on the intersection on 8. Those happen to be both obviously in MDOT right-of-ways. They have to be repaired to MDOT specifications, and MDOT is also requiring us to have them inspected. So I went with Coleman Engineering. We've worked a lot with those guys in the past for design and inspection, and they gave me a quote to do that design and inspection work for a cost not to exceed $3,000.
Can we apply this towards that, the refund we're looking to get from the state then on this?
We have a set amount that we put in on the claim for the state. We did actually take a rounded number at this project because, you know, we basically had the bids from last year, which I think were actually probably a little high because at the end of the year, it was kind of a challenging job. So I can't tell you definitively that the number we put in, but if it would be covered because they'll give us that number. So I'm hoping that under a competitive bid situation, that number we gave them will cover this kind of activity.
I would say if we're moving forward, that we're not going to get any kind of rebate that,
No, we have a number and we're negotiating downstate right now on that number. You're saying,
are you thinking that we are going to get some money then?
yes, I am saying that because it's just a matter of which fund it comes out of. Right now, we're negotiating with the MEDC because of the way they handled that last year. It was so poorly handled that they even admit openly that they messed up with how they excluded 3 counties in the UP. I have all of the legislators, UP legislators downstate, our senator, and all of the UP legislators that are meeting with MEDC. And if the MEDC doesn't come forward, then they're looking at an actual appropriation out of the budget. And again, the way that it was handled so poorly, we got very positive response that something's going to be happening on that, so.
And what was our total claim, Ray?
Mary, do you have that exact number? It's north of 300,000.
320?
320.
Where I want to say it is, I don't have the exact number, but it's around that.
I keep saying 300, but it was north of 300. It was like she said, 320.
I do have a correction on this because I made a mistake. When I was reading Coleman's proposal, I misread a line in the inspection is 3,000 and the engineering is 2,500. So that's a total of 5,500 for the project. So make that note on your sheet that it's not 3,000, it's 5,500. I just looked in the contract.
Well, if we are gonna get reimbursed for it, why wouldn't the state just do it themselves?
Why wouldn't the state just do it?
Well, the state's not part of our reimbursement. I mean, you're talking MDOT. MDOT is, they're requiring us to take care of our water line issue. The MEDC is not associated with MDOT, so quite frankly, MDOT really has no say or interest in whether we get reimbursed or not. So our negotiation is not with MDOT at all on the reimbursement side.
No. MDOT just wants the road fixed.
Well, if we weren't gonna get reimbursed, I would vote no against this, so. I think the state ought to cover it myself, but if you're quite certain that we are gonna get reimbursed.
That is the response I'm getting from our folks in Lansing, so it makes me certain, based on their certainty.
Well, come hell or high water, we've got to get the road fixed. And we're going to be in trouble if we don't.
That is a true statement. It is our responsibility to fix the road.
Okay, is there anything else, or I'm looking for a motion?
I'll make a motion that Coleman Engineering be approved to perform the engineering and inspection of the US 2 and US 8 road repair work for a price not to exceed $5,500.
Second.
Motion made by Lee, supported by Chris. Roll call.
Mr. Ball?
Yes.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Menachini?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
I guess.
Mr. Gottstein?
Yes.
Next on the agenda, we have approval Menominee River and Sturgeon Falls River, or Sturgeon River, temporary and temperature and dissolved oxygen monitoring per FERC license. Joe.
This is a FERC mandate per our issuance of a license to run the hydro, that every 5 years we have to, for approximately 5 months, monitor the temperature and the dissolved oxygen content of the Sturgeon River and the Menominee River in 3 locations. We did this effort 5 years ago, and our time is up to do it again. So I went out for bids on this, and as you can see in your write-up, Dixon County Conservation District was low bid at $5,500 to complete the work to submit to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission.
Sure is an awful difference in price.
Yeah, there was a way bigger difference 5 years ago.
Well, as much as I dislike FERC, we have to do this.
Okay, any other questions?
Can we just turn in the old report?
That
put it
the
in the
Dickinson
daytime?
County Conservation District be approved to perform the Menominee Sturgeon River temperature and dissolved oxygen monitoring for the price not to exceed $5,500.
I'll support. Motion made by George, supported by myself. Roll call.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Menachini?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Gottstein?
Yes.
Mr. Ball?
Yes.
Next, we have Resolution 2015-02, Utility Rate Resolution Revision 1. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One of the requests that we've had over the past few years is to add additional speed to our package, our internet packages. And so we've been working with Packerland Broadband to try and make improvements to the system by adding a 30 meg package and a 50 meg package, and then eventually a 100 meg package. We talked about this last year during budget hearings, and we had to do some work with the system, with the CMTS and some other work. So we think that this is a good, good opportunity for our customers. So one of the things that we decided to do, we discussed and we put forward, is revising our internet packages from a 5, 10, 15 scenario to a 10, 20, 30, and adding the 50 meg package as well. The 100 will come maybe 6 months down the road as we kind of work into it. But in doing so, we had to adjust our rate package, and as you can see from the rate resolution, what we did was we added $3 to the 10 meg. We're moving the 5 to the 10, so we're going up to the 10, and then the 15 will go to the 20, or the 10 will go to the 20, and the 15 will go to the 30. Each one of those will receive a $3 increase. The Tier 4, which we're calling now the Tier 4 package of 50 meg, that will go to $72 per month. So that keeps a consistent $10 a month difference between the packages. So you have a Tier 1 package at $42, Tier 2 at $52, Tier 3 at $62, and Tier 4 at $72. The other thing that we looked at was that on our commercial side, it is industry standard, something that we actually had at one time, and we went away from this past year, but we need to address this and go back towards it, is that on the commercial side, they have a priority service that we give our commercial customers. If their internet is down, if their cable at all, a cable system, internet, phone, is down, we will drop what we're doing and we will go service them. And that in the industry is given a preferential, that's preferential treatment, as well as there's a slightly larger cost to that. So that's a $5 difference between the residential and the commercial. And we also then have a number of static IPs out in the system. In the past, we traditionally had them as part of the package, but in hearing back from a couple of our businesses, they don't really need the static IPs, but since they're paying for them, since there's not an additional charge to have them, they're just going ahead and keeping them. Well, it's important for us, if you're not using them, to give them back. So what we need to do is add a $5 per month charge on the static IP. So if you need them, then you have to make that decision of keeping them. If you don't, then you can save some money and give them back to the system. So I think at that point I can answer any other questions you might have.
Since we discussed this at our special meeting, I've been doing some thinking about it. 3/4 of our residents are silver package, or what, Tier 1 package now, the lowest package, about 3/4 of our users. And for them, this will be $3 a month rate increase. And this is, when you look at the other rate increases that we're going to have to do in July, this increase isn't needed. This isn't a necessary increase. The internet fund is healthy. The internet portion of the fund is anyway healthy. And just to do an arbitrary increase, yes, they're getting more speed, but I don't believe there's been many complaints about the speed at 5 being low, because we have 10 available. If they wanted 10, they could have had it. So I think this is a case of if it isn't broke, don't fix it, and we're trying to fix something that isn't broken at this point. And it's going to be a increase to our residents that they don't need to have. It's an optional increase. That's my feelings on it.
I missed that meeting, so I'm not gonna vote on something I wasn't involved in, so my vote is no right out the gates. But what is the actual cost of doing all this, and what would be our profit on it then? I mean, we're jacking up the price X amount of dollars for all this. What's the cost?
Well,
versus
the
what
whole
we're gonna take
emphasis
in?
behind this was to get to the 30, 50, and then 100 meg offering package. So it's actually, we have customers that are asking, requesting to have higher speeds. This was a proposal that was recommended to us as we went forward to move where, you know, in the cable industry or in the high-speed internet field, they do start at 10 meg instead of 5. Again, that was a recommendation that was brought forward to us. We can keep the 5. That's nothing, you know, nothing, you know, magical about that. But we need to try and include the 30 and the 50 meg package. That was our intent, was trying to get the 30 and the 50 meg package out, you know, to our customers. Now, if you would like us to redo this and go back and include back to the 5, 10, 15, and then include the 30 and the 50, we could review this. But I don't have some of those answers for you, Lee, because we totally reformulated this based on some of those recommendations. You know, so we'd have to go back and you know, commit again on what those packages need to look like then.
Go ahead, George.
In July, you had mentioned July, we're looking at redoing rates.
Well, we redo rates after budget every year. Rates need to get moved around. That happens every year. Then that would be all the rates. We're gonna be looking at all of them.
So, I mean, because we're raising these now, do we have to do it again in July?
No, we don't have to. It's-
No,
It
but
seems like
what-
these are
what
gonna be, July is gonna be automatic, so I mean, it doesn't.
No, we gotta vote on it.
but there are rate increases that end up happening that are necessary increases for the funds. My point was this one's not. We're not doing it to keep the fund in good
Well, we
stead.
need the bigger thing, so what you're saying is keep the lower rate for the lower one, keep a 5 at the lower rate, and,
Again, we were recommended we're going up to the 30, and by adding the 30 and the 50, to go to the more standard 10, 20. And to do that, you know, we took the 5 and the 15 and basically eliminated those two and moved them up to a 10 and a 20. Again, that was just a recommendation that we moved forward with, that we talked about last week. Again, you know, there's nothing magic to that, but I would like, if you're going to want us to keep some of those, then I would prefer that we table it and go back and take a look at the numbers, because, you know, your 30 and the 50, we have to see how that fits with the other two packages.
I mean, what are we really gaining, Ray, by having umpteen different packages?
Well, you have customers that use the system
I mean,
more
but how many?
aggressively.
Are we gonna put a special rate for 1 or 2 people? I mean, you're breaking stuff down to micro hairs here for
Yeah,
what
but
reason?
those are what we call high-end customers
Oh.
that are willing to pay, and they want the, you know,
But-
the higher performance in the system, so
I
we're trying to
agree.
add that to them.
But the people who are drawing are the low ones. The 5 megawatt, right, or whatever.
5 meg.
That's the bracket that we're dropping.
Right, we're gonna bring them up to the 10.
Right.
And like I
And
said,
how
I
many
mean, we can,
customers is that?
770 something.
771,
yeah,
Majority then?
yes.
it's a majority.
Out of
customers.
1,100 customers.
So,
well, if we're gonna table it till the next meeting, I was gonna suggest we correct our bundle package monthly fees terminology, because you've got silver, gold, and platinum in there.
At the bottom.
okay.
And we're doing away with the metal, so.
There's been a lot of discussion on that, more than there probably should have been.
I'm preempting the mayor.
Oh, okay.
How many, as you said, Ray, higher-end customers do we actually have?
Mary, do you have
Mary?
some of those numbers off the top of your head?
Just ballpark,
We
Mayor.
got 771
Well,
at
yeah,
the
I mean,
5,
yeah,
so there's 1,100 total.
you've only got
So you have 300,
another 300.
300 customers that are in the higher packages. So the majority of our customers are on the
I don't have the
5.
breakdown between
5
the
meg.
15 and the.
Is
Yeah.
that
Very
where your-
important customers.
Is that where your more money is, Joe? On the high end of it?
Yeah, we charge more for the higher speeds. You make more money on those than you do on the others.
So we certainly need to do this, but I guess it won't hurt to wait until.
There's no, yeah.
No,
You could table it.
there's
We
no
could-
rush.
If you would prefer to have us keep the 5,
Well, what he's
15.
suggesting is just keeping a lower rate for people who don't use the internet that much, which seems to be about half of our.
About three-quarters.
But I can tell you that, our major cost in the internet is streaming. And right now, you could get the 5 meg package, and you could be streaming, the video, and you're using it more than you think. When you're streaming video, when you're doing the Netflix and the Amazon and Hulu, you're using it more than you think. So,
Well, would that limit their use then? Would we have to put some kind of a gauge on there to prevent them from
I have been
going over?
asking those questions. There's no good answer right now from the industry. I don't know if you've read over the last couple of weeks, but the net neutrality issue that was out in Washington DC, that's been a hot topic. So we're not quite sure where the industry's gonna go with that. I mean, it could end up going all the way towards the way your cell phone looks, where you keep track of the actual data packages that you're using. So once you get to a certain level, you start paying more past a certain data level package. We're not quite sure, like I said, because there's a lot of lobbyists on both sides of the issue. But we do see drastically increasing costs, especially on the bandwidth. And, we have to, look at how we can recover those costs. So,
It's like the TV, it's not necessary if you can't afford it. Turn it off.
Okay, so what's the consensus to table it? Or is there gonna be, or a vote on it?
Don't look at me.
I'm trying to get a consensus with what's the opinion?
You heard my consensus.
if the majority would like to keep a 5 meg package, then I think we should table
Well,
it.
that's what I'm trying to find out.
Yeah, so,
I'm willing to vote yes on it tonight, but I'm not in any big hurry. Yeah, Chris is our expert over there, he should.
Yeah, Chris, what,
She's in your ball.
Yes, it's my suggestions, but table it.
okay. What do you feel, George?
But, I'm gonna
Table it?
Gonna
No
table it?
motion
Fine,
on it?
I'll table it.
Okay. And then it'll be to April 6th.
Okay.
We'll postpone the vote till April the 6th meeting. So I'm looking, I need that motion.
I'll make that motion then.
Is there support? I'll support tabling it. Motion made by Dr. Hayes, supported by myself. Roll call.
Mr. Benigini?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
Yes.
Mr. Gottstein? Mr. Ball?
Yep.
Mr. Oja?
Yes. Resolution 2015 dash, you're gonna keep the same numbers?
no, let's switch that to be
02.
sequential then.
Okay, so resolution 2015-02, wastewater system agreement, City of Norway, Norway Township. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is something that I've been working on for the better part of the year, working very closely with Norway Township, with Leonard Ball and the Township Board. As part of our upcoming rural development project, we needed to have a number of agreements put in place between the city and the township. If you remember, in some previous discussions, under our current utilities authority bylaws and rules, the The authority was set up for sewer, and it was set up for a 1978 bond issue. That bond issue was going to expire in 2018. When we looked at this upcoming project, since there was really only like 4 years left for this bond issue, we decided to ask, or we petitioned RD to allow us to just roll our portion into the new debt. The township decided, because their portion of that bond debt was within reason that they could pay it, they decided that they could pay it. And, excuse me, once that bond issue was paid, the Utilities Authority would cease to exist under its current format. Also, under that agreement, the utilities that were paid for through that bond in the city, the infrastructure, the sewer lines, the lift stations, would become the property of the city, and in the township, they would become the property of the township. And working with the township, I started by working on a franchise agreement with the township, and also, well, a maintenance agreement, because they would now own those lines within the township, and they would need to contract with somebody to maintain them, and the reasonable alternative was the city. And they also would need to pay for capacity within the city-owned wastewater plant. So there were a number of different agreements that needed to be put in place to cover the costs for those contracts. As we were going through this, and remember back to some of our discussions, it made more sense if we came up with one master agreement where the township would give to the city the utilities, basically donate those utilities to the city. Then the city would own the utilities, the wastewater in the township, and then we would have a one system agreement. Within that system agreement, as you notice, it does cover franchise language so that we can operate within their right-of-way. It deals with the charging, the billing. In that agreement, it does have a differential spelled out of 25%, and that's on the ready-to-serve fee. That is standard with how we operate now. It also has language which allows for dealing in the future with expansions, customers, and also the agreement is for 43 years, which is 3 years beyond the 40-year bond that we would have with rural development. That is a rural development request or requirement that we have an agreement that actually supersedes the actual bond issue that we're going to have. There's no provision in there, or at least there's language in there in this agreement, which it does say that the city council, the Norway City Council, is responsible for the rates, and our obligation is, on an annual basis, we'll give a copy of our audit report. So we have this tentative agreement with the township. This was tentatively agreed in January. Rural Development at that time wanted me to wait before we brought this to either legislative body, either the township or the city, until their attorneys in Chicago had a chance to review it. I received word a couple weeks ago from Gladstone that they wanted us to go ahead and have our boards pass this agreement. So it is before you tonight. I can field any questions. I mean, it's a year's long worth of work, and it's something that we have talked on a number of occasions, but I can answer any specific questions.
After I talked to Grant before the meeting tonight. Grant, you had some concerns about this after your review of it.
Well, I mean, not specifically, because I wasn't involved in the negotiation of it, I wasn't involved in the drafting. Ray took the lead on this. I think, if we remember back when I first came on board some months ago, this was an early on discussion. Ray had this in the hopper now for, as he indicated, well over a number of months, and he's been working diligently with council for the township and working through this process. And this isn't Ray's first rodeo working through agreements like this and working on these issues. You know, this ultimately comes down to a business decision of the council and the township, and what's best for the people of the community and the people of the area here working together in a manner that it seems that we've had in place since 1978, right?
Yeah.
And working together and working closely with the township and the city. And as Ray pointed out, it becomes a decision between the township council and the city council on which way do you want to go, business-wise. As Ray pointed out in his summary, both in writing to you folks and just in discussion, there's a lot of different ways to do this. There's probably an infinitesimal number of ways to approach these things, and this agreement addresses the conversations Ray has had during these negotiations. You know, we look at, you know, basically it's a 43-year agreement, and we're taking over. You know, at the expiration of this authority that was created in '78, all the infrastructure goes to the respective, both the township and the city. So the question being, do we want to take over the infrastructure of the township, service it, and work through it as Ray's put together here? And I think you noted on the front page, it would have necessitated two separate agreements if it hadn't combined with one agreement here, and done both a maintenance agreement with the township, and then also a capacity or a disposal agreement with the city as well for the disposal of the waste. This is one way of doing it, and I guess, you know, at this point, the difficult part for me is just not being involved in it. I can't say, you know, this is a good or bad agreement or a good and bad thing. That's ultimately for the council to make the decision on. And you know, I'd have to sit down with Ray and go over much more of the details. It appears to reflect, you know, what the parties have talked about. It is an agreement that will hold water, you know, but without going through and sitting down with Ray. I think we had this discussion back in September or so, or October. You know, at the risk of getting attorneys involved and start fly-specking everything, but that's what I do, that's my job.
You had specifically, when we were talking, brought up areas, section 9,
Yes, sir.
because there's some language that seems to contradict itself, that about the city, that the township shall be assured as much capacity as future expansion, but the city shall have the right to refuse service. They seem to be mutually exclusive statements.
Well, and that's, you know, again, not being a part of it, you know, and looking through this. When you take and look at each paragraph, you can look at the issues, and when you don't take it as a whole, you wonder, you know, how does this interact with each other? When I looked at it, I did see in paragraph 9 where it says the township should be assured as much capacity as needed in the future expansion, or further expansion of the system into the township. You know, do we have the capacity? Was there a system analysis done? Was there a capacity analysis done? I'm sure that Ray's covered a lot of these things, and as you know, he and I chatted a little bit before the meeting and said, hey, you know, let's hope that our area continues to expand. Let's hope that we get new business in the area as well. But the capacity falls onto the city. If we need more capacity, if we have a large-scale business go in, fortunately, it would be good for business. But if we need to expand our capacity, that falls upon the city by the contract. So that was just a question of mine, looking at it, again, just looking through here. So I think Ray can probably answer a lot of these questions, but it puts me in a difficult spot. It's because, again, this precedes when I came on board with the folks, to be able to get too into depth and say, you know, put a stamp of approval on it. I can say that, listen, this is a business decision that the council's making on how to proceed. Ray has very aptly engaged in negotiations with the township and the township council. But at the same time, I would stand back and say, well, it's an agreement that's in place that reflects apparently what was agreed upon.
And that, the language that you're referring to, I mean, it can be confusing, but what we dealt with is that in this project that we're dealing with at the plant, the city has 50% we're at 50% of hydraulic capacity of the plant, but we're at 100% right now of organic capacity. And what that means is that our process is not adequately handling the flow. And that's where Our project is addressing the organic capacity issues. We talked about that. So with a plant at the signing of this agreement, the plant has 50% capacity. Now, there's other language within the agreement that says that in an expansion, the impact of the expansion is borne by whoever's making the expansion. You know, so if there's enough capacity for whatever's expanding out there, then the plant is not going to be covered under that impact because it has enough to take it. Obviously, the lines and if a lift station or whatever in the field, that's covered under that project. If the capacity of the plant is affected by the expansion, then that has to be included. That could be an additional clarifier, you know, just off the top. That could be an additional clarifier to increase the capacity. That would be covered under the terms within here of an expansion, and that would be covered by the expanding party.
It's ultimately the ratepayer who's going to pay for the expansion. And that was my question.
Well, not necessarily, because under the terms of this agreement, it does specify that if there's an expansion in a new area, that the increase is covered by whoever's making that expansion. That's what the language in this agreement says. So
So if the township wanted to run sewer down to the industrial park, they'd have to cover the cost.
that would be covered before it would be done. That's correct, under this agreement. Unless there was a separate agreement through a grant process or through some other process, they would have to come back and address it that way. Probably the developer would come back, or whatever program it was.
Do you remember, Ray, what the initial bond issue was in $78 wise? I know it was like a 75% grant at that time. Would we?
I'm
Mary,
looking at
would you know
Mary.
what the initial-
Was it 2 million, something on that order?
Well,
I'd have to look it up.
okay,
I think it's somewhere
right
around
now in this deal, the grant is $1,154,000, and the loan we're getting is $1,651,000. Of that 1.6, how much basically will we be charging, or will the township be paying us on that?
What happens, Lee, is that our books will look exactly the same as they do now. So what we do is we have all of our customers, the 238 customers that are in the township, will be part of that equation. Okay? And so the bond issue will be run out as a system-wide a bond. The revenues will be run as system-wide revenues. So
Then basically that 238 is what percentage of our total customer base
We have 1,600 roughly.
of sewer?
Sewer customers?
Sewer customers? Well, sewer and water.
About 1,600.
About 16, okay.
it's a small percentage.
I see that, yeah.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
Ray, I just want to make sure, when I'm reading paragraph 20, where the township's going to lien the property, is that saying they're only going to lien for delinquent sewer charges?
Under this agreement, it can only cover sewer. Under the franchise agreements that we have in place with water, it covers water, and then with electric, it covers electric. So, you know, we have to deal with each one separately. But yes, they are going to lien, you know, for those uncollectibles.
Okay, one thing, just as more of a housekeeping, if you look at the resolution itself, there's a paragraph after the signatures, be it further resolved that our community, it's a supporting public power week, be it further resolved, that shouldn't be part of this, should not be part of this resolution. I support Public Power Week, but we should have its own resolution, not be part of this. Okay, any other questions, comments? Otherwise, I'm looking for a motion to approve the amended motion, and it's 2015-02.
As amended.
Yep. Anybody want to make a motion?
This is for the resolution here,
Yeah.
wastewater agreement.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion, that resolution 2015-03, wastewater system agreement, be signed by the city, between the city of Norway and Norway Township.
It'll be 02, because we tabled that last resolution, so we're just changing the number.
Okay. Oh,
So 2015-02,
02.
as amended. Okay, I'll support. Motion made by George, supported by myself. Roll call.
Dr. Hayes,
Yes.
Mr. Gottstein,
Yes.
Mr. Ball,
Yeah.
Mr. Oja,
Yes.
Mr. Menigini.
Yes.
Next, approval, City of Norway, Viola property agreement. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is something that I was contacted by some attorneys from Viola. They are in the process of selling their building, and there was a need for a corrective deed. We did a project a few years ago on 11th Avenue, and there had to be an agreement from Viola at that time to gift over to the city right away, because the way that the road was installed many years ago didn't quite follow the right-of-way. Under the grant that we had at the time, we had to have clear title to all of our right-of-ways for the grant money. This particular request is basically to allow the mayor to sign the corrected deeds from Viola. It's basically going to say all the property north of right-of-way is Viola's, all the property south of right-of-way, or with the right-of-way south of that point is the city's. And those agreements are in the process of being developed by the lawyers from, or attorneys from Viola, and they aren't ready yet, but they would have them by the end of the month. Since we are not meeting till April 6th, they requested that if we could get them through the system by the end of the month, agreed to, so that they could clean this up by the end of March.
So this is just cleaning up something we've already done, just to get the paperwork right.
Correct.
Ray, how far does that property go towards Main Street?
Not
I'm sure
very,
somewhere
it's a
along
very
there,
small
the
piece.
right-of-way kicks in.
Yeah, it's not a very small, it's a very small piece. The actual survey is in your packet. You can see it's 240.
Yeah,
Basically
I-
240 feet past the building, so it's not very far.
And then that would butt up to what Loadmaster owns?
Yes, and they're actually working with Loadmaster on this
I
issue.
saw that, yeah.
So Dave would appreciate if we could get this done quickly for him.
Who is Viola?
Viola is selling it to Loadmaster.
They're an environmental services
Environmental
company.
Services.
Oh, okay.
The old Lardmite building. Loadmaster is buying the property.
That's correct.
Okay. If there's nothing else, we need a motion.
I'll make a motion that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign the corrected deeds between Viola and the city of Norway.
Second?
Motion made by Lee, supported by Chris. Roll call.
Mr. Gottstein,
Yes.
Mr. Ball,
Yep.
Mr. Oja,
Yes.
Mr. Menigini.
Yes.
Dr. Hayes.
Yes.
The last thing on our agenda this evening is approval, 14th Avenue Storm Sewer Project Construction Services. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We talked about this last fall, fixing the issues we have on the storm sewer along the hill over 14th Avenue. We talked about the engineering, for this project. We approved the engineering for the project, and we'd like to look at the bidding and the staking of this project. We asked, at the time, we did not have that as part of the bid package from Coleman, the engineering package. So we asked them to come and provide a price for providing those construction services. Joe, you handled a lot of the discussion with Coleman on this issue. Do you have anything you want to add to it?
No, not really, Ray. I think that if everybody recalls, the reason we're doing this is because of all the major washouts that happen on Lake Street. And basically, the gravel road disappears. And so this is to correct those issues, this proposal here.
Can I ask one question, Joe?
Sure.
Or approximately how much you think that this is gonna cost before this job is done?
We have an engineering estimate for construction of $40,000.
Just for construction?
Correct.
That makes the engineering services 25% of the actual cost. Seems high in my book.
The whole project's been high.
Yeah, but it's something that has to be done.
Yeah. You know, keep in mind, that's just engineering estimate. That's not a solid number. We go out for bids, it could come in lower, could come in higher. I mean, we don't know till you bid
Well,
it.
we've got a good relationship with Coleman Engineering, I realize that.
Yeah.
They are in town. It does count in their favor.
You know, when you look at the percentages, I know I've been through this conversation, number of different types of projects. Typically, we see that percentage higher on MDOT jobs because of the paperwork. There's different reasons for projects to be higher or lower. Your smaller projects, the percentage is usually higher than really large projects. I would have to make a guess, and I guess I'd have to defer this one to Jeff for confirmation or for if it's different. That the staking and the slope on this project is challenging. You know, I mean, there's quite a bit of drop. We went through a number of different conversations talking about the materials, the types of engineering that we would that would be appropriate for the job, and then actually the construction of it, because again, it is a very complicated project when you look at the sizing of the pipe and then the installation on that hillside. I would imagine, again, correct me if I'm wrong, I would imagine that the surveying and staking that's done, you know, to get the job done is probably pretty challenging in this project as compared to a normal job.
That's one of the reasons, yes.
And I know you're going through a garbage dump.
Yeah.
That's another.
And, you know, we talked about, Ray brought it up, construction materials. You know, we thought at first we could just get away with using a PVC type plastic hardened pipe. But then after reviewing it through the engineering process, it was recommended to go to concrete because of the velocities of the water and the erosion in that pipe. Concrete's going to hold up the best, so that drove the cost up also.
This is one of the things that I mentioned last week, Ray, at our meeting, is that we got to be more selective how we sell our property. You know, you got homes in the area, and that's what brought this problem out, when there were no homes there.
Yeah. I mean, they've been there for now a while, eh? I mean,
Yeah, they've been there for 20 years, but still,
Yeah.
the fact, when there were no homes there, I mean, how many years has that pipe been there? Been there longer, a lot longer than I have been around. And these are the things that we run into when we sell property, not looking.
George,
what
I
we're doing
remember.
when we're selling.
I remember the first few years that I was here, working for the city. A tremendous resource in having those conversations was Lino Alexander, because he used to come in and we used to have conversations about, you know, he'd talk about areas and he would say, oh no, don't do that, because that was an area for retention, or, you know, we need, and that's why the breadth of knowledge going back is so important, because as it gets built up, you forget about why you had it like that in the first place.
Exactly, Ray. And that was the issue. I said, you know, by the time this project is done, you've probably got $100,000 wrapped up into it. The city has to wait a long time in order to get their taxes back on $100 grand. And you never do, for what they made out of selling the lot. And that was my concern. We gotta, you know, there's so much property around here for sale that there's no reason to be building on the side of a cliff where you know it's gonna wash out everything in underneath you.
We already paid $3,000 just to survey the lots, just to clear up the deeds. To me, I thought it was ridiculous. I thought our assessor could have described it.
I don't want to leave that one go. Grant, from an attorney's perspective, if our assessor gave you legal description for a deed, how would you address that?
It's a good start.
It's a start.
Right.
Would you accept it?
Not without a accompanying survey.
That's why you have to have surveys, because you can't, those are legal documents that are going into record. And just having an assessor, I mean, I can go out into a plat book, I can go out into, and come up with a legal description, but, you know,
Well, my
it's going
point
on
was
the
we were
deed.
in a hurry to spend $3,000 to get that cleaned up, and we're not doing the project until this year. We could have found probably a surveyor who would have done it for a lot less money. It didn't have to be cleaned up right away last summer.
Any other questions or comments? Otherwise, I'm looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion that we spend $9,850 to Coleman Engineering for 14th Avenue Storm Sewer Project, construction and services.
Support.
Motion made by George, supported by Lee. Roll call.
Mr. Ball?
Yes.
Mr. Oja?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Dr. Hayes?
No?
Mr. Gottstein?
Yes.
That's our business this evening. Does anyone from the audience wish to address the council on any topic? If you do, please come up to the podium, state your name and address for the record. You'll have 5 minutes. Okay, seeing none, Lee.
Young gentleman raised his hand, I think, or?
Huh?
Yeah, if you want to address the council, come up.
Jeremy Bjorkman. No, I talked with Ray before about those bridges over by the mirror. I do need to just.
Well, let me help you out a little bit. Jeremy is here, he's looking for an Eagle Scout project, and I've recommended that he look at the bridges at the mirror as a possible, the bridges, they're supposed to be boardwalks, but they're actual bridges now, as a possible project. He did look at the Hanbury, but your time frame is pretty much this summer. So.
Yes.
Go on.
So I do need to get the more of the planning to get that, because I know I need to do the. I know you said talk about the Parks and Rec Board and the plans with the engineers. I was planning to talk to you about that. So I'm not too much. I wasn't really planning on bringing it up now, but
We kind of goaded you into coming up to the.
Yeah.
But this is nice to have you come in and address the council.
yeah.
Let you know what we're doing, or let them know what you're doing.
When's the next Park and Rec meeting?
The next Parks and Rec meeting will be the last Wednesday, the 25th of March
Okay.
at 6:30 down in the basement. And then we have a couple of representatives from Coleman Engineering that you might want to have a chat with. They might be able to lead you in a direction,
Yeah.
you know, in that area. So, but we do appreciate not only yourself, but all the Boy Scouts that look to us for, you know, these Eagle Scout projects.
Yes.
They're fantastic for the community.
Of course. All right.
Thank you.
Sorry for forcing you to come
That's
up.
all right.
Does anyone else from the audience wish to address the council? Lee.
A couple items. How are we coming along with the sale of the property and building of what, Perry Printing, North Star, whatever it was called the last time. We joined back into the partnership, and they were supposed to help us, and the DDA kicked in money for it, and we kicked in money. Do we have any update on that, Ray, as to how they're trying to promote it, what's going on over there?
I don't have a specific update on that. We have been talking with the folks at Multicolor. I know that they're just finishing up some cleanup activities, so I'm not sure how much.
I believe they're
actual
supposed to be out
activity
at the end of March.
is. Yeah. So
Okay.
I think that's probably, where we're at, is that it's now ready to be out there.
Okay. Question. Were they getting any kind of a tax break on that building?
Not to my knowledge.
Not to your knowledge?
Nope. They haven't worked on anything through us. Now,
Okay.
we did talk to them on a number of occasions, because they're in the industrial area, that they would qualify under what they call Public Act 198, which is some property tax relief, real property tax. They used to have what they call Public Act 328, which is personal property tax, but that's going away through the new state mandate. But we did talk to them a number of occasions on different projects they had, and they never really came in and applied for it, so.
Oh, okay.
But, so they were one of the customers that didn't have it. We didn't have a certificate for it.
Okay. And through the grapevine, I understand they're asking $1 million for the place?
I
Have
can't
you-
confirm.
Okay. Do you know what it's assessed for? I'd like to find out what that building is assessed for, to make sure they're getting a proper assessment, seeing as they left us high and dry. 9th Avenue, we've got some nice cracks opening up right down the middle of our 2-year-old road. I'd like to see that addressed. 14th Avenue is falling apart. I know last year that they put a lot of patches on it, but that's got to be if it isn't the worst, it's the second worst road in town right now. I guess that's all I have.
Okay, Dr. Hayes.
I was wondering what the DDA is doing as far as putting a walkway up along the south side of US 2, the west end of US 2, or is the DDA doing anything about that?
The DDA is extremely interested in working on non-motorized access up and down the highway. There's different opinions in the group as to where it's located. There's a couple of options. There's enough right-of-way to put something next to the highway, but there's a number of folks that don't find that necessarily appealing and want to see if we can put something behind the businesses, which, again, you run into the wetland areas and some other issues. So, again, we've been working with Coleman Engineering on different options. We're also looking at routes on the north side as well. And we're looking at 2 different types of routes, one that goes close to the highway and the other that goes back from the spring, goes back behind. That would catch maybe more of a residential, like around the spring subdivision, and back towards the hill and then down to Strawberry Lake. So we're looking at a couple different options, but the DDA is very interested in promoting something. They just, we need to find viable routes for them. And again, there's some very strong opinions about getting it close to the highway, especially at the 55-mile-an-hour zones.
Yeah, I'd like to see people away from the road myself. Speaking of the DDA is not putting money into our sewer projects, are they?
They are discussing right now contributing towards the wastewater treatment plant project to basically because there's a percentage of their district that is, it's in the sewer, in the sewer district, but they're looking at their fund. They kind of had to re-look at it based on, Multicolor, and that's something that we're going to be discussing on Wednesday at the DDA meeting.
Well, maybe my opinion doesn't count, but I don't think that they ought to be going into our sewer project myself. I think they've got other projects that they should take care of that ratepayers in Norway and Vulcan need to be paying for, not the DDA. I would certainly vote against no if they attempted to do that. I noticed in our package that you included some information that 11.7 million people are covered under Obamacare. And Mr. Oja, our mayor, pointed out previously that probably the local hospital is doing well because of Obamacare. And they've since heard several news programs where they said hospitals all over the country are doing well because now they're getting paid for taking care of people instead of uncompensated care. So if anyone out there is interested in keeping up the local hospital surviving, I think we need to keep Obamacare. I think you need to write your congressman and tell them to don't get rid of Obamacare. And I guess I've got some other comments, but I'd like to save those for the next meeting.
Okay. George?
What would Mr. Banachek say about that?
Well, I asked him one time what was wrong with it, and he directed me to a website, so I don't think he knows what's wrong with it. It's basically a conservative idea that started, and he and like most of the Republicans are yelling and screaming about how bad it is because they hate Obama and they want to get rid of him. They're racist, I think. That's my opinion.
Ray, on that compost site over on the new compost site, are there going to be any way that we're going to be able to get there with side-by-sides? That was a question that I asked right off the bat when we decided, or they decided to put it over there, because I'm a great user of it, and I mean, I use it 100% with
Yeah,
my side-by-side.
you're not technically or legally supposed to go down US 8. So,
Right.
you know, I don't know what alternative route. I guess you might be able to go,
I mean, outside of the fact of going around the fairgrounds and coming back, going through Marion Park and then.
correct. I think
I mean,
that's what I
that's-
was thinking off the top of my head, but without actually researching that route, to see if
Is-
you were all legal.
Yeah, let me ask you this then.
Okay.
Is there any possible way that we can get a route out over there to it?
I
from
think
the
that's worth
existing-
looking at. Again, we have to go down, look at the maps and see what access sites.
I mean, a lot of people use it for 4x4s and side-by-sides and stuff, trailers.
May need a sticker on your 4x4 then.
Put one on my back or my forehead.
Since you brought that up though, and you noticed in the packet, I did recommend that we actually discuss opening that back up, because I don't think we're gonna get to, finalizing the new compost site, and I think we've already received calls. Trish, we've received calls at the city hall already about, well, what the heck am I gonna do? I think we're probably gonna need to open up the old one until we can get the other one ready.
Yeah, that was gonna be my comment. I've heard of some questions on that too.
Yeah, so my recommendation is let's open it now. The council said no, but I mean, my recommendation is to open it.
Trish, can we put it on the TV, on the scroll?
Yeah, we'll advertise it, George.
I think you just open the gate and
It's supposed to
it'll be,
get colder this week, but I mean, if we get weather that's gonna stay like this, or
oh, they're out
the
there.
next week or two, you're gonna have people raking.
Yep, yep.
Our buddy up along the highway, she got her lawn raked already, so
I know.
there's people out there. Bids on the water and sewer, anything done on them, any deadlines set up on them that when bids might be going out for them? I mean, do we have any idea when this project is gonna be started?
Well, on the water side, we're looking at 2016. Because we have to get the paperwork finalized with RD on the wastewater plant first. And then it shouldn't take that long, because it's a lot of the same paperwork for sewer, on the sewer side.
Yeah.
For collection. The water shouldn't be that difficult, because we've had projects right along. Mostly on the, you have your right-of-way map and your right-of-way issues. Those are usually take the longest. Right now, we're kind of at the mercy of RD. We've got the submittals in. We're hoping, and and I say this, we're hoping that we can get all that buttoned up and get a bid package out by, say, May, 60 days. I don't believe we're gonna hit, my target was July 1st for actually awarding a contract, but I think it's probably gonna look more like August, with start of construction maybe in September.
So but phase 2, which is the water and sewer part that would have the road repairs, that'll be next year.
Yeah, because, we're gonna immediately then start working on those packages. They're working on engineering right now. They're pretty far along on the engineering with the water and the sewer. If we can get those packages done in the winter, the bidding on that project is probably gonna go pretty quickly. My goal for that is to try and kick that off in the May timeframe of 2016. And it's probably going to be, it's a large enough project, very well could be a 2-summer job. We might take half of it in 16 and then half of it in 17. We will have some very specific conversations coming up in May when our budget hearings, on how that's going to look with our road budget and, with what we're going to do around that. Because we're going to find out proposal 1, which goes out in May. So we'll find out what our budget's gonna look like, our revenues, depending on whether that passes or fails. So,
Okay. Of course, the minute you get your first thaw, what, and if any, streets are we gonna be targeting for this year? Or
yeah,
it hasn't really been mentioned, Ray. I'm not.
It hasn't been mentioned, and I've been sort of delaying on it because it's really gonna come down to having an all-out discussion with you guys on, you have 2 things. One is priority. When you see the list, I mean, it's easy to find something, find a street that needs work. I mean, that's not the hard part. It's harder is to prioritize and how much funds. Yeah, it's hard, and find, the funds, how much is gonna be available. So what we have to do is actually back into it. Are we gonna have $200,000 available this year? We have to get to that number. So that almost has to go through budget hearings. Now, we can give you our idea of priorities. I can tell you right now that based on what we've seen, you have a couple areas like Valley View Drive. You have Scenic, which is in bad shape. Summit is in pretty rough shape, obviously. So, I mean, you have a number of roads. And if you notice, I mentioned more rural roads, and part of that is because a majority of the center town is in this RD project.
Right.
So you're going to look at outside center for some of this other work that we're doing.
Joe, did you have time to check on that street that, from the end of the city limits there, Circle Drive, going out to Circle Drive?
We were just talking about the Forest Drive intersection.
Yeah, Forest Drive.
Yeah.
Is that combined city limits and township or no?
The center line, and I didn't ask, tomorrow,
That's in
our
the city.
auditor will be in, assessor will be in, so I can get an official
That's
opinion.
in the city. Pine is in the city.
I think Pine's in the city.
Pine is in the city
Yeah.
because the properties across from Pine are all in the city.
I thought the center line was the city limits.
It's-
So that road is
Pine
all
is in the
ours,
city.
from Forest Drive, how far?
To basically Rob's house, to
To-
Viking and then just past.
The whole road,
Pretty large nights and
okay,
Yeah,
all right, because I've been getting comments about the intersection.
Yeah.
that's a
That
bad,
bad
that's
it
a
is.
bad
just,
spot.
Yeah.
That's ours.
it's broken up
So,
so bad. I just
there.
went like that this year.
Now we got an answer. It's in the city limits.
Top of the list. That's all.
Let me butt in here for a second, I forgot
Lee
something.
just had a request for 14th Avenue.
Main Street, can we get the sweeper down?
Sure.
The curbs are just terrible. I mean, I'm surprised all the cigarette butts didn't plug up the sewer drain. You go down there and see where people park their car and they open the door and drop their ashes out right there.
The parking lots are pretty bad too.
Terrible, yeah.
Let's say sweeper in general.
Yeah, well, we typically have a springtime area that we do with grooming the sidewalks and everything.
Try to catch it before we get the next snow.
Hopefully it'll snow soon, and we won't have to deal with it.
Chris? The only thing I had was the compost site, and that's been already addressed. Joe?
The only thing I wanted to comment on was the situation with unit number 2 at the hydro that we discovered on Saturday when we dewatered it, and the runner's blades cracking in the same fashion that unit 1 were cracking. The runner that is in the number 1 position, or the A draft tube, as we call it, only has some very small cracks, an eighth to a quarter inch long, and the end runner on it has cracks in anywhere from 6 to 8 inches long. I believe that looking at it, if we take the whole unit apart, we will miss spring runoff with the whole unit. What I believe that can be done is I can take the end runner off with a minimal amount of work, about a day and a half to 2 days worth of work. I can get the cracks all welded up, get the gussets put in place and reinforced, and get the Belzona put on it within a week and get it put back in place. And then I would like to leave the other runner the way it is. I don't believe it's going to get a whole lot worse running it for a couple more months to get through spring runoff, so we don't miss any revenue during spring runoff. So that was kind of my plan, unless there was a compelling reason why the council would not want me to do that.
Yeah, I think we
That
want
was
to make
the-
sure you're okay with us
Yeah, that
going
was the,
forward, 'cause that's-
moving
That
forward,
would be on
that's
a
what I would like
time
to
and
do.
materials.
Yeah, that's all going to be done on time and material, yes.
Have we had exorbitant amount of water, or has it been?
The water has increased over the last week. To say it's exorbitant, it's not. We went into earlier in the week, last week, running about a 2,200 CFS river. We are currently running a 3,000 CFS river right now. And with the weather forecast getting colder, freezing at night, I believe that's going to tighten up.
Yeah.
I can get this unit back online by the end of the month. So we might lose a little bit, but it's really not enough to worry about.
And you have one back online?
Yes, one is online.
That's right,
And,
3 of the 4.
Yeah, 3 of the 4, but
Yes.
and it's running fine?
yep, we're making 2 megawatts with it currently.
Do you have any good news for us, Joe?
No, I don't really have a lot of good news.
How about the insurance?
Sure, I can, the insurance company has came and evaluated it, and they are compensating the city for the labor and materials to have it repaired. We have a $25,000 deductible.
Now, that's good news.
Okay.
We're gonna go back, are you gonna, with the potholes and that, are you gonna go back to the crew like you had last year?
Yeah, now that the snow is gone and it looks like things are getting warmer, I have to have discussion with Ray and Mary about bringing those, at least 1 or 2 people back in to do that
Are
program.
those same 2 people willing to do it again, or you have to check?
No, I had hired one of the gentlemen on the garbage truck, so he's not available. I would have to find someone to replace him. In the fall, when we laid the other guy off, he said he had interest in doing it again for me. But I don't know if he's working. I'd have to contact him. He might have another job by now and not want to quit that job to come here to do that. So I have to find that out. But we do need to get started on that as soon as possible to get that lined up so we can get putting material in potholes.
Anything else?
Nope.
Barry? Tricia? Brad?
No, thank you.
Ray?
Yeah, the only thing I have is, I'd like to extend my congratulations to Joe. We were notified this morning from